Welcome back, my friends. Jake here. Today, I'm joined by a special guest. Her name is Anna from Ukraine, and she's special for several reasons. The first one is she's the first podcast guest that I've ever had on my channel. In the comments section, more and more, you guys have been requesting me to do interviews with people. And in the comments section, she's been one of the most requested from her supporters. So please, Anna, thank you for joining me. Introduce yourself.
Thank you, Jake. I'm really honored to be your guest, and I'm also very grateful for my subscribers who have mentioned me in your comments, as I value the community of my channel too. I am Anna, and I'm from Ukraine, and I have decided to vlog since the start of this awful war with Russia and Ukraine. Well, first of all, because I felt like YouTube lacks real life information. There is a lot of statistics, I don't know, military information, but not enough real life stories. And I felt like every day something important is happening. And to understand what is it to be Ukrainian now, how do we feel, how did the life change for us is so important. So I started vlogging and was really surprised that so many people demonstrate their support and want to know more about Ukraine, not only about military situation, but about our history, culture, and various other topics. In my ordinary life before this war, I'm a PhD in linguistics. I teach at the university. Also, I write for the daily Ukrainian newspaper and work in the sphere of cultural heritage preservation and popularization. So perhaps these are just brief information about me.
Wow, you have a PhD, so you're a doctor.
Dr. Anna, yeah, to some extent, but not the doctor, as Ross said in the Friends.
Yeah, I understand. So, what city do you currently live in? And can you just speak to what is the current spirit of the people currently in Ukraine?
Well, honestly, I have to tell you that I have always been proud that I'm a Ukrainian and I like our cultural and historic heritage, but I was greatly surprised at the bravery of Ukrainian people at the beginning of this war. These very first days, they were very decisive, and with so many bombs falling on the territory of my country, so many soldiers coming here, people did not stop, and ordinary people started to oppose, to fight back. And this examples of citizens' bravery, not only military bravery, gave a huge support to the wave of patriotism and confidence that we have to win this war. Because for me, and I believe that many people in the world will agree, this is a very vivid division between evil and good, between black and white, what is going on in Ukraine. Now, of course, some people are tired. Some people, we expected at the beginning, we thought it will take like a week, 2 weeks, 2 months. Now we realize this is going to be a long war. Many people who were refugees and who had to flee their houses are returning now. What to some extent surprises lots of observers that they start returning to the places that are still dangerous, that are still under hard missile attacks, like Kharkiv, for example. But this feeling of home, the desire to see what is going on in your city that you love, in your house that you own, is really strong. And definitely when they check the polls, whether we want to stop, whether we want to negotiate, we see that we want to win. We understand that any kind of pause, any negotiations, they will not lead to something positive. They will simply postpone this war and lead to more victims in general. Ukrainians understand that this fight with Russia did not start this February. It did not even start in 2014. It all began like 3 centuries ago with Russian Empire trying to expand and trying to erase Ukrainian identity. So we feel like this is a very important war that must be won. First of all, for the existence of Ukraine, and secondly, for the normality of the world. Luckily, I personally live in a semi-dangerous zone in the western part of Ukraine, and for me, the war also began with explosions of our local airport and of some other military objects, but there were not many of them. There were some victims of these attacks, but of course, it does not go in comparison with things that were going on in Kyiv, Irpin, Bucha, I don't know, Kherson, Mariupol. But it's important not to be very relaxed because I have to confess, many people in Ukraine are now relaxed, and when we have air raid alarms, they ignore them, and it's wrong because sometimes they can target totally unexpected places, and still you are never safe, no matter where you are in Ukraine. There were examples when they targeted a very small railway station somewhere high in the Carpathian Mountains where no people were working at all, like no passengers, but it was like, what? Why? So you can never feel safe. But at the same time, I believe we have become more aware and like know lots of the rules, how to behave, how not to spread negative information, panic, and how to react in the cases of danger.
Yeah, I think just this war going on for 6 months now, it's difficult to always maintain that heightened level of awareness that potentially you could be a target at any time by the Russians. And I'm sure those air raid sirens go off frequently. Can I ask, how old were you in 2014?
Was 28.
So, did you feel like back in 2014, I mean, just in general, did Ukrainians feel like a bigger war was coming? Yes, there might have been the skirmish in the Donbass region, but in 2014, when Russia seized Crimea, did Ukrainians ever think that this would turn into a full scale invasion with Russian troops coming from the northern border?
I think that in any country, in any nation, there are lots of people who are not very much into politics, military information, and who prefer just not to focus on negativity. So for these people, it was just like some bad things happening far away. But the majority of Ukrainians, they know that Russia is a very dangerous neighbor. We were occupied during the Soviet era, and it led to the death of millions of Ukrainians, for example, during Holodomor, which is a true genocide. So we know that Russia is a neighbor no one would like to have. Um, some of my subscribers even told me, think about all of these nations that border Russia. And if you ask any of these nations, what neighbor would you like to change? They will all choose Russia. Nobody wants to live close to them. So the majority of people understood that it is going to be the continuation of this war after Donbass. And at first, they wanted just to keep this conflict, like I cannot say frozen, but minor, that still stopped Ukraine from joining various military alliances, organizations, because typically a country at war has limited options, even to buy weapons from other countries. So that was their first idea. But of course, they wanted to continue. To tell you the truth, even reading all the news reports from the American, British intelligence services, I did not believe full-scale war is possible. What we thought, maybe they will start moving on Donbass, add some, I don't know, more villages. Maybe they will try to connect some waterways to Crimea, something localized in that zone. And this area was pretty well protected because within this 8 years, Ukrainian army has become really strong, well prepared, and we are very grateful for our allies who train, who teach, who exchange the experience. And we thought that we are more or less prepared. And then when it all started, from one point of view, for the majority of people, it was not a surprise because we knew that Russia is an enemy that constantly wants to take over Ukraine. You know, we even have this kind of joke that how come Ukrainians can imagine their life and without Russia, and actually our life without Russia is always better, but Russia cannot imagine its life without Ukraine. For their empire ambition, USSR ambition, they need Ukraine. This is their priority country. So to some extent, it was not a surprise, but being a normal person, some of my subscribers even taught me, normalcy bias or something like that. But like living in the normal world, you cannot imagine something like that is possible in the 21st century in the center of Europe.
When you talk about why is Russia doing this? What do all men who have money and power want? Just more money and power. And I think the oligarchs in Russia, they're all billionaires. They're getting rich. There's speculation that Putin is the richest man in the world secretly, and
Mm-hmm.
they just want more. They just want more. That's my opinion. I don't think anyone would want Russia as their neighbor. And of the 14 breakaway Soviet republics, how many of them want closer ties to Russia? It's pretty much only Belarus. So let's go back to February, and can I ask you, what were you doing at the time, and what was your immediate reaction those first couple days? I don't know. Did you initially try and leave the country and then come back, or did you choose to stay?
Well, we were all shocked, and I was sleeping, and we received a phone call that it all started. Lots of people in Ukraine received similar phone calls, like it all started, and being in this information bubble, like something can happen, still you don't believe it's possible. And then when we woke up and we learned that it happens all over Ukraine in different country, in different cities, not only in the east of Ukraine, in the south, it's in Kiev, it's in Lutsk, it's in Lviv, it's everywhere. They have started with massive bombings of airports. And when I was reading this news, early in the morning, it was 5 a.m., close to 6 a.m., I have heard explosions in my own city. So we realized it's happening everywhere. And of course, people started calling each other. I have called my relatives who live in Kiev and invited them to come, and they were trying to escape the capital. And it was really difficult during the first day because there were huge traffic jams. People were panicking, and they have started bombing. There were Russian tanks in close to some Kiev underground stations, and it was like unbelievable. And these were extremely important, decisive days because Putin's plan was blitzkrieg. And I think they have made lots of mistakes because they thought that Ukrainians will be afraid when they see soldiers on tanks. There were not so many soldiers on these tanks, but they thought people will be afraid, or there are lots of pro-Russian people, and it will be easy for them to move and maybe to take over various administrations, and in a couple of days everything will be over. But in country, people mobilized very quickly. There were huge queues for various military offices when people tried to, I don't know, join everything, to try to get weapons, to try to get an opportunity to defend their small cities, big cities, villages. Lots of block posts appeared, people starting, I don't know, all the nation was doing everything to protect every piece of the Ukrainian land. And this was the moment, like the president did not escape, did not start negotiating. He surprised many of us because like he's not that experienced in the military, but we were really proud to see that he's brave, he stays in, and that was very symbolic and important. And perhaps Putin got just the country instead of denationalizing, like erasing Ukrainian identity. I think he boosted it to a totally new level, and people were cooperating, helping each other, and that was really, really important.
You did mention Zelensky, and just my perspective as an American, I will say that Zelensky's decision to stay in the capital city of Kyiv, I think that fired up a lot of people in the West because uh, you could have, in the beginning of this war, just said this is an internal dispute between Russia and Ukraine. Russia's going to do what Russia's always done to their neighbors. But the fact
Mm-hmm.
that President Biden offered Zelensky a ride, him and his family, maybe his cabinet, out of the country, and he said that quote, "I don't need a ride, I need ammunition." It was at that point that I got fired up and excited and said, wow, Ukraine is actually going to fight. And if they can get the supplies and support they need, perhaps they can win this war. That was my initial reaction those first 2 or 3 days.
Totally
So I can
correct.
see you're very well informed. You keep up with current events. You talk about them in your videos. Can I ask, what are your sources? Where do you go to get information about what is happening with the war?
Well, I try to always use various sources because, I think that within this month, even first weeks of war, Ukrainians got a very quick and effective course of media literacy. Because at the very beginning of this war, people started posting, I don't know what happened, an explosion next to their house, or sharing some troops that they see, tanks, and so on. And very quickly they realized that this can lead to tragic deaths of people, or help Russian troops, I don't know, occupy territories or target important objects. And in a week or two, people stopped doing stupid decisions. And we have also learned that there are a lot of poisonous Russian propaganda things, and they are not always that obvious, like we eat children. Sometimes they are very decisive, hidden. They come from, I don't know, the sources of the European Union or even the United States. That's why we have stopped trusting like one source when you read this headline and then you believe it's the truth. So I monitor, of course, the official pages of various Ukrainian military institutions, ministries, also a couple of our famous news web pages, and some user-generated content. There are huge Facebook and, I don't know, Telegram communities that have already proven to be trustworthy. But also in my reports, I do not focus on analytics. I do not try to provide like military expertise because, I'm a linguist or something. I'm trying to share how an ordinary Ukrainian feels. And my idea was just to reflect and to share maybe some minor things that for people may not seem very important, but for Ukrainians, they were important. And like huge media companies, they don't speak about that. And for my subscribers and for the world, it may be important to know these details, as they tell much about the Ukrainian character, the Russian character, and the ways Russian soldiers behave here. So I always warn my subscribers that I'm emotional and I'm subjective, because it's very difficult not to be like that when your country is at war. But I never manipulate. So if I'm subjective, and if I make a mistake, for example, in something that I'm sharing, and later I learn it's not that way, I will try and explain them. Okay, I did that mistake, but I never do that intentionally. Plus, I really focus on the things that do not demand that much military, I don't know, financial expertise or something. These are just the thoughts of an ordinary Ukrainian woman living during this difficult and at the same time very historically important moment of Ukrainian life.
You mentioned Telegram, and I don't have a Telegram account. I've never used Telegram, but apparently Telegram appears to be widely used in Eastern Europe and Russia, and I get a lot of information from Twitter, and I can tell that the primary sources being used by these Twitter accounts is actually Telegram. So it does always make me nervous getting information originating, I think, from Ukrainian soldiers on the front lines using their smartphones to post on social media, and they use Telegram. I then get these pictures and these videos and these stories, and I'm choosing to share them because I think not sharing them is a greater disservice to Ukraine and what they're currently going through. It's so difficult to, as a YouTuber in America, to independently verify what's actually happening. So I'm just trusting my eyes. I'm trusting my judgment and common sense to make sense of all the devastation and destruction currently happening. Let's talk about the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. I feel like this is one of the top stories in the world right now. But first, I want to get your perspective as a Ukrainian to the history with the Chernboyl nuclear power plant. And maybe for a lot of Americans, this is fresh in our minds because there was an excellent miniseries dramatized, an excellent miniseries on HBO titled Chernboyl, and I watched it when it came out 2 years ago. Fantastic TV show. Anyone who has HBO, I recommend watching it. But as a Ukrainian, what do you learn about the history of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant?
Well, honestly, this is a very symbolic, I cannot say symbolic catastrophe, but I do believe that the Chernobyl tragedy is one of the reasons why Soviet Union collapsed. And I also enjoyed greatly watching the series. They are difficult to watch. For example, I was trying to make my mom to watch them, but well, she didn't because she felt like it's too emotional. And I have to tell you that I don't remember much from that time, but this atmosphere of the Soviet Union, of this hierarchy relations inside, I don't know, party and workers of the Chernobyl station, it's all very, very realistic. In Ukraine, Chernobyl is something that we don't like to be associated with right now, because one of the first words that you hear when you say I'm from Ukraine, it was like Chernobyl. Now, perhaps it is war. And to tell you the truth, these are not the best associations you want to have with your country, with your culture, but life is as it is. Many Ukrainian families, thousands of Ukrainian families, suffer from uh, consequences of Chernobyl catastrophe. Lots of people got the diseases. Lots of people lost their relatives. Lots of people had to leave their territories. And of course, now 30 years later, there are lots of excursions to Chernobyl. We know that flora and fauna is perfect there. And once again, this demonstrates that sometimes human behavior may be even more dangerous than various like chemical reactions. But we all know that. And once again, I think that the tragedy of Chernobyl is not only the things that happened there, the explosion, the radiation, but also that secrecy that Soviet Union government decided to use because people were not informed it's dangerous to go out. And there were parades on the 1st and 2nd of May. Children were walking. The cloud, this radioactive cloud, traveled not only over Soviet Union, but also to Sweden and other countries. And of course, if Soviets were more open, if they wanted to cooperate with some other countries, I know that even in the US, there were similar smaller accidents, but still they were present, and maybe sharing that experience could have saved some lives. But they decided to hide and to pretend that everything is okay. And that is one of the greatest things, not just the tragedy itself, not the total wrong behavior on the power station, but also the decision to hide it, not to protect people, not to evacuate them sooner as possible, not to warn the firefighters, not to protect them the way they need. And also, that's why when we talk about Zaporizhia nuclear station, it is not just the danger for the world, but it also opened up this awful, dark Pandora box in the heads of Ukrainians because we have already gone through a similar experience. And Zaporizhia power station is 6 times larger than Chernobyl, and it can cause many more troubles. And the fact that Russian soldiers use it, threaten the world with it, it goes without saying that they are terrorists and they are dangerous for the world, not just for Ukraine.
Yeah, that's you mentioned where I was going with this, but I feel like in Russia they don't talk about the history of Chernobyl. They don't teach the people because it made Russia and made the Soviet Union look bad. So I see all the developments currently happening at the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant now, and I feel like to Westerners, to Ukrainians, it seems obvious that the potential for another nuclear catastrophe can occur. And why isn't Russia trying to avert this? Why isn't Russia trying to, prevent this disaster that we all see unfolding in slow motion? There's no response. There's no good answer to this. I wish that the Russians currently at this plant had seen this HBO show and had studied their history and understood the danger, of messing with this plant and what could potentially happen. Because, like you said, the radioactive cloud, the fallout, it wouldn't spare anyone. It would blow everywhere.
Yeah, you are very right. And the problem is there are some answers about Russian mentality that I cannot answer. I ask these questions, I try to find the answers, but I cannot. You know, they don't care. Okay, I understand they want to erase Ukraine, they want to destroy Georgia, they attack Chechnya, they threaten Poland and Lithuania, but they don't care about their own people. They don't value the lives of their soldiers and the lives of their citizens. And it has been like that for centuries in Russia. I know I have read some memoirs of Napoleon War generals, and one of the reasons they thought it is difficult to win in a war with Russia because they totally don't care about the number of victims. Nothing can stop them. They don't care about human lives. And also, there are lots of such examples during the Second World War, for example. It's so important that Soviet Union fought fiercely against Nazis, but at the same time, they never cared about the number of soldiers that will die. And there are lots of examples when they wanted to take something over, for example, for the celebration of the 7th of October or something, and that resulted in the death of thousands of soldiers. And if they waited for a week, for example, only 20,000 could have died. They don't care for that. They don't care for the thousands or millions of people, including Russians, who can suffer from this explosion on Zaporizhia nuclear power station. They care about this image of Russia as a ruler, image of Russia as a superpower, a very gloomy, dark superpower.
Yeah, I think in the West we just struggle to comprehend, the casualness at which the lives of these Russian soldiers are being lost. I see countless pictures and videos of Russians being killed by the Ukrainians on social media, and I don't understand how ordinary Russians can tolerate it, how they can know that these pictures or images are there and either they're not looking at it or they just don't care. I don't understand where is the outrage from ordinary Russians about what is happening to their soldiers. It just feels like they don't value them the same way that other countries would. So I want to talk about your YouTube channel. You've been vlogging daily, and what are your personal goals with this channel? And in general, what are your personal goals, and maybe what projects are you working on right now?
Thank you for this question. Once again, when I have started this channel, I had like 47 subscribers, and I was using my channel for watching other YouTubers. And when I have recorded my first vlog, I did not expect that many people will watch it. And I was surprised that like I got 300 views or something, and it was a huge success for me back in March. And I also felt like it was therapeutic, how do you pronounce that for me? Speaking about the things that I consider important in this war and demonstrating some things. And my channel started growing. Of course, I'm not a serious YouTuber yet, but I always speak about war in Ukraine. I have lots of people asking me to say something about, I don't know, trips in Ukraine, customs in Ukraine, food in Ukraine, and there are lots of things that I want to share, but now I cannot focus on this like positive things because of war. And I'm really glad that in my channel I have like so many comments that tell me much about the way people care. They write from different corners of the world. They demonstrate their support to Ukraine and share beautiful stories, how they, donate, support Ukrainian refugees. They find connections in their families or in the histories of their countries with Ukraine. And I always feel honored that from now on, this country is no more and terra incognita, something, a part of the Soviet Union or something similar to Russia. They learn a lot. And I see that my mission is to tell them more about the life in Ukraine, about the history of Ukraine, like to make this country, like now it's not safe to travel to Ukraine. but to give them, I don't know if you can say, the taste of Ukraine and to demonstrate how different we are. And when I realized that I have some people supporting me, buying me coffees, becoming my patrons, that was a surprise to me. I did not know such services exist. It's my subscribers who told me. And then when I felt like more confident, I decided that we can launch a new project. And we had the first series, and tomorrow will be the second episode, Soviet Myths Debunked. I was born at the very end of the Soviet Union, and I cannot tell you that I remember much. But the problem is that the context of the Soviet Union, it is still present in Russia. It is the thing that fuels Russian propaganda machine, and lots of Soviet Union myths, they are now used by Russia. For example, Soviet people all are equal, no national identities. That's what they use right now when they say no Ukrainians, no Belarusians, all are Russians, just like Hitler's Ein Volk and his start of the Nazi regime. So it's all very similar. And I felt like I was trying to find on YouTube some information about this popular Soviet myths that are now actively used by Russian propaganda. And I found some great documentaries, but they were really long, very serious, and typically covered a particular sphere. And I decided we can try and make something simpler, because it's totally okay that not many people, especially young people, are very much into the history of the Soviet Union. But there are still things they have to know, because Putin wants to recreate Soviet Union. It does not matter how will they call it. But the ideas are very similar, like denying other countries, Russifying everything, describing West as decay and dangerous, looking for enemies everywhere, and explaining poverty because of this outer enemies, and many other examples. So I hope this project may be useful, simple, popular, but at the same important. So tomorrow will be the second episode on my channel. About the attitude.
I saw the first episode. I thought it was produced pretty well. I am looking forward to the second one. I'll share the first one. I know your YouTube channel is at about 8,000 subscribers. So anybody watching this who's made it this far, go check out her channel. If you want to support her, you can subscribe. Anna, do you have any questions for me, maybe to wrap up this interview?
Yeah, of course. I think I have many questions, but one of the main questions is, like, your YouTube was a little bit focused on different things. And now, after the start of war Ukraine, you talk a lot about the situation here, and you explain the things perfectly. And I think that having this huge platform, you're helping Ukrainians enormously. And that is so important as this war continues. And some people do lose focus and get used to this. And for Ukrainians, this is one of the greatest fears. So how did Ukraine come into your mind and into your heart, and what inspired you?
I'll be honest, prior to February, I did not know that much about Ukraine, aside from it used to be a Soviet republic. But I was serving in the Air Force for 6 years, and I got out in February, and this war started in February. And I remember my time serving. I was a nuclear and missile operations officer. And the entire time, my entire job, I was in charge of intercontinental ballistic missiles. And what was the purpose of my job? Why was I doing it? You know, this goes back to the Cold War era, where the Soviet Union and the United States had, 30,000 warheads pointed at each other. And I was saying to myself the whole time while I was doing my job, why am I doing this? The Soviet Union collapsed over 30 years ago. So it seems silly to keep maintaining all of these intercontinental ballistic missiles. Yes, nuclear deterrence is important, but France and the United Kingdom, they do this just with submarines and maybe bombers. Why do we have the land leg of the nuclear triad? And my attitude was, Russia's not going to do anything. We've been sitting ready for, for 30 years. And I just didn't believe that Russia was going to do anything. The oligarchs in Moscow, they're getting rich. They're, exploiting the people. They're exploiting the resources. They have more than most men could ever want or need in life. And sure enough, as soon as I get out, Russia invades Ukraine, and I feel like it's game on. I feel like with the
Mhm.
propaganda and the messaging being put out, I do believe that Putin's plan was to go for everything, to retake Moldova, to retake the Baltic states, to retake parts of Kazakhstan, and maybe even go into Poland. If this war for Russia had gone well in Ukraine, it just would have continued. Putin would have kept going. So that
Mhm.
is my
Yeah.
impetus for why I decided to focus on this topic. My background is in political science. I do enjoy studying history and culture. I've traveled around the world a bunch. So the more I learned about Ukraine, the more interested and invested I became. My channel used to talk about finance and investing, but as soon as I started talking about this war in Ukraine, I started gaining a wider audience that wanted more information and they wanted my perspective. So I feel like I can contribute value to the YouTube community by continuing to talk about this conflict. I'm incredibly grateful for all the people that are choosing to support me right now. And I want to pay it forward by once again highlighting other people that I think deserve more attention, more followers. And you are definitely one. So I was very happy and excited to have you on my show. Do you want to have the last word?
Yeah, I would like to thank you, first of all, for speaking about Ukraine and standing with Ukraine. Because one of the most important inspirations that we get in these dark times is feeling of the support of the democratic world. And it's very, very, very important. And I'm very grateful for people who watch YouTube channels like ours who speak about war in Ukraine, who leave their comments, who address their senators, who ask for various volunteering web pages where they help, or at least in conversations, they speak about Ukraine, they explain some misconceptions and stereotypes. And from now on, I remember when I was like before this war, maybe I was a little bit uh, paying not enough attention to other conflicts and wars all over the world. And now I have promised myself I will never be neutral because you have to fight evil. And you're very right in that. Sometimes I even think it is already the Third World War because Russia is doing so many bad things in different corners of the world, and we have to be strong and united to stop that. And YouTube definitely lacks Ukrainian, English speaking YouTubers and people spreading the information because Russia is working really hard with their propaganda machine. They have like lots of people who try to demonstrate, to deceive, to manipulate, and it's extremely important to support each other, to spread the truth, and to fight. Of course, Ukraine has become a battlefield now. It is something we have never wanted, but we have to stop Russians here on our territory because otherwise all the world is in danger and the countries that you have enumerated first. And it's so important to return back to normalcy and I don't know how, somehow even to liberate Russians, from their brainwashed propaganda and regimes.
Very well said. I appreciate what you're doing. I hope my audience can check you out. Um, that's all for this podcast. Until the next one, everyone, take care, be safe.